All kinds of things inspire the creation of a book. You might have a philosophy that you want to explore, an experience to capture in words, something that you've figured out and you're ready to share with the world. Usually that's the case. But one book, rather than stemming from inspiration, turned around and inspired me to change. Now, some people are adamant about the idea that writing isn't a spiritual endeavor, and I get that. It's a craft that requires years of training, study, and technique. A fiction writer has to master structure, characterization, prose, dialogue, seamless world building, and clarity of theme. An endless number of specific and important features of writing. But at the same time, when you've written something that challenges who you are to your very core, and you never plan to go there, well, those kind of subconscious experiences are hard to deny. So here's how it happened. Last year, I was working on a book called The Tides of Neem. It's a cat and mouse gangster thriller set in a Mediterranean-inspired city called Niem. It centers around a drug called the black sap that allows users to experience the emotions of others. Addicts called dark mouths become obsessed with other people's lives, perching under apartments to feel the emotions they feel. In addition to emotional binding, sap has a physical binding quality and is used in mortar around the city. Dark mouths, desperate for a hit of sap, will lick the walls to try to get a sap high when they've run out of the drug. It is a dark world in Niem. One very different from my pretty wholesome, straight-edge life as a family man. In fact, I sometimes wondered why such imagery emerged from my subconscious in the first place. The idea of there being some dark, unexplored corners of my mind felt downright silly for someone so positive and optimistic as myself. And the characters in Niem 2 were also starkly different to me. One, a gangster, Rin. The other, a police officer, Kasser. Me, an elementary school teacher by day, and a writer by earlier in the day. Rin, the gangster, is conceited, manipulative, and holier than thou, while Kasser is a tortured police officer from the lower city, surrounded by dark mouths who wants nothing more than to live with his wife in the pristine world above, but is slowly being coaxed into prophethood by a powerful cult. Sounds pretty unrelatable, right? Well, last summer I'd finished the story and I wasn't satisfied with the ending. Something just felt off about it, and I wasn't sure what it was. I let it rest for a few months to allow ideas to churn in my mind. And then one day, I had it. I went back to the story, finished it, and wiped my hands. It was done. Following that moment, life swallowed all my time for writing. Work, which had felt mostly light and easy up to this point, became suffocatingly difficult. Teachers are notorious for shouldering more responsibilities than is healthy. And by far the most depleting of these responsibilities are the emotional ones. As a teacher, you form relationships with kids because you care about them, because you dream of their success in life, because you imagine the kinds of people they could become. You don't bat an eyelash when you have to stop what you're doing to track a kid down who's run away from school, or intervene when tables are flipped or parents are swearing at you. You don't mind because the child matters. The child really matters. That's why you're teaching in the first place. But at the same time, I was suffering in a way I never had before. I felt short of breath all the time, and I started getting unreasonably angry at the people that I care about most for the first time ever. While all this was going on, I was also writing and directing for a youth theater company, building sets and soundboards, writing music, and conducting rehearsals. Anyone who's directed an original production knows how all-consuming that work is. By the end of the day, I felt like an electric machine that had been drained beyond empty. Eventually, it all came to a head. I had to step back, look at my life, and consider my priorities. If my family was what mattered to me most, then something had to change. There were a lot of hard and beautiful conversations that came out of that period, but among it all, I had one of the most surreal experiences of my life. I opened a copy of the most recent draft of The Tides of Neem. It was time to get back to writing. At this point, half a year later, I'd almost forgotten what I'd written at the end of the story. Reading it sent chills down my spine. Kasser, being bred for prophethood, had to decide between a life dedicated to his wife and future family or a life dedicated to the service of others. The consequence of either choice would be someone's death. Suddenly, this story that had been so intriguing and yet unrelatable to me revealed itself in a totally different light. The sap addicts were obsessed with the inner lives of people just like I strove to empathize with everyone I encountered. The world was one of light and dark, up and down, the direction of self-actualization or self-destruction. The gods were the two lovers, the current and the tide, an example of how to be interwoven and inseparable, rather than competing for attention with the outside world. And then there were the ruins, the past Niem, the first drowned Niem. jutting out of the water where Kasser would stand, contemplating what was and what could be. Unbeknownst to me, I had written a cautionary tale to myself, and I'd written it just in time. I am Kasser, and I had no idea. Have you ever had an experience like this, where your writing surprises you, teaches you something, reveals something to you about yourself that you might not have previously known? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If you enjoyed that video, you can learn more about my world building by watching my videos on tree and bone magic. Support my books and educational work on Patreon. Subscribe for more videos that I hope will inspire and uplift you. Godspeed.